practice with guns, were you able to determine?
Yes.
Were you able to determine if he was a person who was familiar with that is alleged to have been used in this particular matter?
Yes.
Yes, he was?
Yes, he was familiar.
Okay. Was Mr. Bloom ever, to your knowledge, was he ever interviewed by the police?
Yes, he was interviewed.
From, cut to the chase, my understanding there's an 18-hour interview with Mr. Bloom.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you participate in that? Was it a series of interviews or just one?
There were different interviews.
Okay. How many in total do you know?
There was one on June 14th, 2016. I spoke with him briefly on the 15th about a more in-depth interview that was going to take place on the 16th.
Did you participate in those more in-depth interviews?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So you were for the entire length of them or just portions thereof?
I was present from about 1 p.m. on June 16th until about 10:30 a.m.
All right. And so who else was present? Was it yourself and others or just you and Mr. Bloom?
Initially it was Mr. Bloom, myself, Detective Sergeant Stasiak from the State Police, and Detective Sergeant Escalante of the State Police.
Do you recall their first names?
Jacqueline Stasiak
Okay.
and Ben Escalante.
Okay, thank you. And so you overheard those interviews?
Yes, I participated in
You
them.
had participated, okay. There were a lot of questions asked Mr. Bloom on that occasion, over 18 hours worth of questions, correct?
Correct.
And one of the questions, I assume, was for him, asking him to account for his whereabouts on the occasion of Ms. Fletcher's killing.
That's correct.
Do you recall how many different explanations he gave for where he was on that occasion?
Judge, I guess I'm going to object. I thought the court ruled yesterday that the alibi was not coming.
One, the alibi information has already been testified to by this witness on direct. Secondly, I think what the court, and correct me if I'm wrong, the court ruled that the alibi information from the tapes did not come in.
Okay, this is a different.
This is, I'm not asking her to reflect on the tapes. I'm asking her, from her knowledge of the information of this case, whether it's from the tapes or from another source, if this individual offered multiple explanations.
Well, then I think we got to ask that question. I mean, if her knowledge comes from the interview, then it's on the tapes.
Well, but wait a minute. You're saying this witness previously testified regarding an alibi
Yes,
by
sir.
this declarant?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'd like to turn Mr. Probst to the bench. You may proceed. I will allow the question and answer.
Let me re-ask it very directly. Did Mr. Bloom give more than one alibi explanation for his location, for his whereabouts, on the occasion where Ms. Fletcher was killed?
I'm not aware of any variations in his alibi.
Thank you. We better talk again, gentlemen. We better talk again, just for. Okay. Now, as I recall, you testified earlier. All right. You testified earlier, way back when, probably back in the olden days, that that Mr. Bloom had offered an alibi and you checked it out.
Yes.
And that alibi was what?
That he was in Grand Haven for a sand soccer tournament,
Okay.
as well as some other things.
And what else, what did you find when you checked it out?
A photograph of Mr. Bloom at the sand soccer tournament.
Okay. Did you, let me provide you. Thank you. May I approach you, Your Honor? Detective, will you take a look at those? I think there's 6 photographs or copies of photographs there. Are any of those the photographs that you saw that showed Mr. Bloom was at the soccer tournament?
Yes.
Which one is that?
This one. This one.
Okay.
This one.
And where's Mr. Bloom in those photographs?
He's leaning over toward his son, Cameron, right there in each one of them.
One moment, please. Detective, could you do me a favor?
Yes.
Would you, let them, I better mark it since I'm going to propose exhibit A. Would you circle Mr. Bloom in this photograph, please?
Yes. And the photos I have, they are larger, so there's a larger portion of him. But he's standing.
Just on that was fine. And is on proposed exhibit A, is that photograph date stamp, time and date stamp?
This one is.
What's the date on that?
The date is June 29th, 2014,
And the time?
and the time shows 3:50 p.m.
Okay. Based on, I assume, your knowledge of the geography of this region, this tournament was in Grand Haven.
Yes, it was.
How long might it take an individual to travel from that particular tournament to the location where Ms. Fletch was killed?
Well, based on how busy it was in the area that day, I mean, I would estimate about a half an hour.
Okay. So if that's 350 in that stamp,
Yes.
do you have any, are you aware of any photographs with a later date or time?
No, I am not.
Okay, so if it's 350 in that stamp, is a half an hour to the location of the shooting,
Approximately.
approximately.
Not to the shooting, I'm sorry, to Mr. Bloom's house.
I'm not asking Mr. Bloom's, I'm asking
Okay.
to the spot where Mrs. Fletch was killed.
Okay, it would take longer than that.
About how much longer?
10 more minutes, so.
Okay. So, and I understand your approximation. You've never timed the distance.
Right.
And you wouldn't be able to do it anyway because you know what the crowd level was on that particular occasion.
Exactly.
So approximately 40 minutes from that location, the 350 on the time stamp there. So if a person were, if he were to leave that location at that moment, he could have traveled the distance between where he was and where Ms. Fletch was killed in about 40 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes. Let's go 50 minutes. That will put him at that location at 4:40. My math right? Yeah, 50 minutes to 350.
That's correct.
Okay. And the best of our information was Ms. Fletch was killed after 6:02 p.m. that day?
That's correct.
Okay. So had he gone directly from there to the location in the where Ms. Fletch was killed, based on our calculations, my example, he would have time to travel the distance. Is that correct?
Based on this example, but we knew more information.
Okay, and that's what I'm getting at. You knew more information. Well, first of all, you also knew. Well, did you know that Mr. Bloom went to this soccer tournament or volleyball tournament? My apologies.
Soccer?
Was it soccer?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. The soccer tournament that he traveled. He and his family traveled on 2 different vehicles, correct?
It was one vehicle.
Okay. Mr. Bloom told you he has 2 vehicles, correct?
He had 3.
He had 3. And one vehicle, I guess, is kind of beat up. He calls it the shit car or something like that?
That's correct.
Okay. But it's not your testimony that he traveled that car that day?
To the sand soccer tournament?
That's correct.
There was one vehicle
And all
that was driven to the sand soccer tournament with his entire family.
his entire family, meaning?
Meaning Mr. Bloom,
Mhm.
Mrs. Bloom,
Okay.
and his 3 children.
Okay. Do you have, well, I guess, maybe I asked already, do you have any photographs of him at the tournament at any later time than the one that proposed Exhibit A?
Nothing that's time-stamped, no.
Okay. All right. And you said there's other stuff, correct?
Yes,
Is my understanding that Mr. Bloom, there's information implying that he went to a Walgreens or Walmart, is that correct?
yes,
That evening?
yes.
And the basis and were you able to confirm that?
Confirm it through interviews
Of who?
of his family.
Okay. So when was the interview?
The interview with who?
With the family.
There were multiple interviews with the family.
When you asked about the Walgreens situation, how long after Ms. Fletcher's killing was the interview?
There were, like I said, there were multiple interviews. There was one on June 14th,
The same year?
June 14th, 2016.
Okay, so two years later?
Yes.
Okay.
There were interviews with the family, I believe it was August of 2016,
Okay.
and then some times in between there as well.
So you were able to confirm Mr. Bloom stayed at the tournament through his family,
Yes,
and you were able to confirm that he was at Walgreens through his family.
yes.
Did you ever get a videotape of him coming to Walgreens, approaching Walgreens, and going in on that occasion or on that date or that time?
No, it was 2 years later.
Did you ever get a receipt, say a cashier receipt for something they may have purchased, indicating they were at Walgreens at 2 years later on that occasion?
There were no indications that he made a purchase at Walgreens.
Did you check his bank records?
Yes,
And there was no indications that he made a purchase at Walgreens that occasion?
I did not see that.
Okay. And it was at Walgreens that really convinced you that he had an alibi, basically because he was supposedly there at the same time that Miss Fletch was being killed. Is that correct? Or-
Not particularly at Walgreens. He was with his family in one
Okay.
vehicle at sand soccer.
Okay. And did it ever come to your attention that the family split up and the wife went to get the pizza and he stayed at home?
It would not have been, it would have been after the entire sand soccer tournament was done and after the awards ceremony
Okay.
was done.
So basically the alibi was confirmed by interviews with his family.
His family, and then interviews with like the coach of the soccer team who confirmed times of the games. And
He was watching could he confirm the time that my client was there? Or was he coaching?
your client?
Yeah, not my client, I'm sorry, Mr. Bloom.
No, he couldn't confirm. He confirmed the times of the game.
Yes, he confirmed the time of the game, but he wasn't watching Mr. Bloom to see when he arrived and when he left.
That's correct.
Okay. And so, did it ever come to, and so your testimony is that you never heard any other alibis from Mr. Bloom other than this one?
From what I recall, it was always the Grand Haven soccer tournament.
Okay.
I don't remember any variations of that.
You were in the, do we have, one moment, ma'am, we're getting some documents and stuff.
Okay.
I can't. Okay, all right. Do you ever recall Mr. Bloom? Get my names right here. Mr. Bloom thinking he was at work at the time that Ms. Fletch was killed.
No, not that I recall. He got out of work at, it was like 2:09 p.m.
Well, I know that. I know the alibi's no good, but the question is, did he ever make it?
Did he ever make what?
That alibi, that I was at work at the time of the killing.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And all right, let's move on to something else here. Ma'am, the interview that was conducted, 18 hours of interview with Mr. Blue, those were tape recorded, were they not?
Yes, the majority was.
Digitally recorded.
As much as we could.
Yeah, probably don't use tape anymore, huh?
Digital.
Okay. Oh, are you familiar where McCormick's gas station is?
Yes, there are a couple of them.
Okay. The one in question where we have the exhibit showing the van going by McCormick's at 6-something in the evening?
Yes.
Okay, you're aware of that one?
Yes.
Are you aware of where Mr. Bloom lives?
Yes.
Approximately how far is that gas station from where Mr. Bloom lives?
I would say 3 to 4 miles.
Okay. Approximately how far is that gas station from where Mr. Willis lives?
It would be more. I don't know, 8 miles maybe.
8 miles?
Maybe more.
And okay. I noticed that there, well, do you know, if you know, had my client, Mr. Willis, gone from McCormick's directly to his home as best he's able? Does that require him to take the highway, or is that something you take over? Is the most direct routes overland without using the highway?
The most direct route would be the highway
Okay.
from Russell Road.
All right. Do we have that exhibit? What number is that? Okay. Mr. Hilson, are you set up to bring up the exhibits at all, or not this one?
I'm not.
Okay, no problem, I didn't ask you. No, pardon me? No, no. One moment. Let me show you a document, proposed B, counsel. Proposed exhibit B. May I approach, Your Honor? Ms. Ferris, would you take a look at proposal exhibit B? Do you recognize that document?
I know what this document is.
What is it?
It's information. We'd sent a search warrant to Vonage, which was the service provider for Mr. Willis's landline service.
And does it indicate that Mr. Willis made a phone call?
It shows there was looks like an outgoing phone call from the landline.
Outgoing phone call from his home?
From, 231-777-0070, which was Mr. Willis's residential phone.
Does it say the time and date of that phone call?
The start time of the phone call, 6/29/2014 at 10:26 p.m.
Now, were you here when we had the testimony from the phone expert who talked about Greenwich Mean Time, that you have to subtract 4 hours?
Yes,
Okay. If you subtracted 4 hours from the, I assume, is that Greenwich Mean Time, what time would it be?
this is summer, so 5:26. If this is UTC time, I would have to confirm this is UTC time.
You can't do it by looking at it?
I don't see where it says it. Some of these are automatically converted, so I can't say unless it actually specifies that on the document.
All right. So if it is UTC time, it's 6.
I'm sorry, in the summer, it would actually be, you subtract 4, so it would be 6:26 p.m. And
If
it
it's
it does specify that it is GMT.
Okay. So the call's 6:24 for a civilian?
It would be 6:24 p.m. Or sorry, it'd be 6:26 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Detective, Your Honor, I move to admit proposal exhibits A and B.
I'm not sure about B, Judge. I mean, I guess I don't, can I see it again, please?
You most certainly may. Where's that?
I don't have any objection.
Exhibits A and B will be received.
All right. And just a couple more questions. A couple more questions, Detective.
B is, just for my records, B is what? Mr.
B is the phone record from Vonage.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The day of Ms. Letch was killed, I think that, explain to me if that's something different. My understanding is that the last telephonic communication was about 6:02 that evening,
From Rebecca Bletch's phone?
from, or to it. The last time, well, the last time she responded to a telephonic conversation, about 6:02 that evening.
It was 5:59 p.m.
5:59. And the 911 call would have gone out about 6:11.
That's correct.
How far, do you have any idea how far it is from the location where Ms. Bletch was killed and where Mr. Willis lives?
It would just be an estimate or a guess.
That's all I'm asking for.
I would say approximately 8 miles or so.
Any idea how long, did anybody try to travel the distance, see how long it takes to drive from one point to the other?
I did not.
I have no further questions, Your
Mr. Hilson?
Thank you, Judge. I want to start with Defense Exhibit B. That indicates a phone call from the residence, right?
That's correct, just from the
Doesn't say who
landline.
called.
That's correct.
Okay. Just as far as the alibi is concerned for Mr. Bloom, I want to dig a little bit deeper. Were you able to, or between you and investigators, determine that he did work that day 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.?
Yes, he did work during that time.
And then after he got out of work at 2 p.m., he went to a open house in Grand Haven. Is that correct?
Yes, he went to his niece's open house in Grand
And
Haven.
he met up with the rest of his family.
Yes,
They stayed at the open house and then ultimately made their way to the sand soccer tournament.
yes.
Now, because of where it was located in the traffic, can you explain the vehicle situation so everybody understands? Because at that point in time, when they're at the open house, there's 3 vehicles. Is that right?
Yes.
Whose?
Tori, his daughter, Bloom's daughter, had a vehicle at the open house. His wife, Rhonda Bloom, had a vehicle at the open house, and he, Mr. Bloom, had a vehicle there, which was the largest vehicle of all three.
Now, did they left the open house, and where did they go from there?
They all decided they were going to meet in the area of Walgreens in that parking lot area.
All right. And then from Walgreens, did all three vehicles go down to the state park, or how did they go?
No, they decided between paying for parking, it was at the state park in Grand Haven, they didn't want to pay for the parking and they didn't want to deal with all the traffic with three different vehicles. So all the family members got into Mr. Bloom's vehicle and they traveled in one vehicle to the sand soccer tournament.
Okay. So all the family in one vehicle goes to the sand soccer tournament. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I know we have some photographs of it, and it's my understanding that Mr. Bloom's daughter, actually, their team won the championship game.
That's correct.
And that game started at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes.
And it's also my understanding that those games were 3 11-minute periods.
Yes.
About right?
That's correct.
And from your conversations with the family, Mr. Bloom never left the sand soccer tournament. Is that right?
That's correct.
In fact, after the medals and the pictures and everything else, they all had to go back to the one vehicle.
That's correct.
And then all of them went from there back to the Walgreens area.
Yes.
And there was a problem, wasn't there not, with Tori's vehicle, is that right?
Yes, she had some vehicle problems.
And who fixed that?
Mr. Bloom did.
All right. And then is it my understanding that from that point on, all three left the Walgreens parking lot at about the same time?
That's correct.
Now they're all in separate vehicles at this point, right?
Yes.
But they're all leaving at the same time.
That's correct.
So if the soccer match goes until, let's say, 5:40, and there's still medals and pictures, they're getting to Walgreens, or at least leaving maybe Walgreens, maybe by 6 o'clock?
At the very soonest.
And it's a half hour, 40 minutes from that location to get all the way up to Automobile Road.
Yes.
And this was, you confirmed this with Mrs. Bloom
Yes.
and Tori,
That's correct.
and you said you talked to the coaches about the time.
Yeah. Yes.
And also, I'm sorry, did you also collect a pizza receipt?
Yes.
From where?
From Little Caesars on Whitehall Road.
And what time was stamped on that receipt?
That was 6:24
PM.
p.m. on the 29th.
Okay. And that was, that was on the 29th, so that was a location they went to after the sand soccer tournament.
Yes. It was Rhonda Bloom's transaction.
Okay. And you recall, by the time she got home, was Tori home? Do you remember?
I can't recall. I know they were all meeting back at the house to have pizza that she was bringing to the house.
More importantly, was Mr. Bloom home
Yes, I believe so.
when she got home?
When she got home?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not asking you when she got home, but when she got home. In other words, when she walked in the door, Kevin Bloom was at home.
I can say that they all sat down and had pizza together.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, just to clarify, you had the photographs,
Yes,
so you had that, but you also talked to witnesses as well.
that's correct.
I have nothing else to say.
Your Honor?
Sure may.
I don't have a date for that.
Okay. Mr. Ferris, would you take a look at that, please? Is that the championship team? Is that the team that won that day? As far as you know?
I don't recall. I do not see Mr. Bloom's daughter in this particular picture.
Okay, that's really my question. The young lady's name is?
Carly Bloom,
Okay, and you don't see Carly in that particular?
not in this photo.
Okay. Do you, and I was in conversation, but maybe you could repeat for me. The pizza receipt is at 6:24 in the evening, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And based on what you've explained, the tournament ended when?
I can't say a specific time as to when it ended. The information I have is the last game was approximately started around 5 p.m.
Okay. And so, again, it's all the medals and all that, and these ladies are wearing medals, is that correct?
Yes, I don't know if that's the runner-up medals or if that's the championship medals. I don't know.
Do you know the source of this photograph?
I have observed that photograph on Facebook.
Okay. So you don't know who actually took the photograph?
No.
Okay. So the championship game began around 5?
Yes.
Is it your information?
Yes.
Okay. And the game took how long?
There were 3 11-minute periods.
Okay. Now, is that the case when one team wins the best 2 out of 3? If they win 2 in the beginning, do they still play the third 11-minute period? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. So if my supposition is correct, then if one team wins 2 of those 3 games and wins the first 2, they don't play the third one, so there's 2 11-minute periods. Is that correct?
I believe the one game is broken up into 3 periods.
Okay.
There were games throughout the entire weekend.
Okay. Do you know the rules of soccer?
I do not know the sand soccer rules.
Okay. All right. Yes. All right. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing else, sir.
Okay, thank you. Detective, you may stand down.
Thank you.
Your Honor, yeah, yes, sir. Mr. Hilson?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, the next witness is going to consume some time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5 to 12, so we're going to come back at 1:15 and recommence. So I just want to remind you, you may not discuss the case with anyone. You may not have any conversation with anybody involved in the case or read or listen to media accounts of these events. Please return at 1:15. Now, gentlemen, just for the sake of the jury, is there anything we're going to have to deal with at 1:15 other than can we come in here and start?
We can come in here and start.
You're not aware of one thing that I'm going to have to deal with?
Listen, I'm not playing any surprises, Judge.
Okay,
So.
all right. You heard it. You had it. Okay, we're going to start at 1:15, okay?
So I'm going to stand back here, so if I can hear you, I'm sure he can as well, okay? That's the second thing. When you're speaking in a courtroom, Everything is eventually going to be typed up. Everything is going to be typed up, and a transcript, they call it, is going to be created. But in order for them to type it up, you have to speak. You have to answer questions verbally. So whenever I speak to you, or so Mr. Hilson speaks to you, you have to answer out loud. Okay.
Okay.
And I understand. People tend to just nod and shake their head, but in order to make a record, we got to make sure that we can actually have something that just came out of your mouth. Okay.
Certainly.
Okay. Now, and the final rule of the road is something that, a rule I break all the time, and I have to try to work on. In normal conversation, when two people are talking, we, because of body language, because of experience, because eye contact, a lot of times a person can figure out the question you're going to ask and jump ahead and go ahead and answer it before you even ask the whole question. For the reason I talked about before, we can't do that because we're writing up a transcript. So what I have to try to do is try to wait till you answer your whole question before I ask you another one. And if you will, try to wait till the entire question is out of my mouth or Mr. Hilson's mouth before you begin your answer. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. And we'll remind you as this thing goes along, just in case you need reminding. All right? Now,
Yes.
you're the defendant in this matter,
Yes, I am.
and I imagine that you've been waiting a long time to tell your story.
I have.
Okay. So, a little nervous?
A little bit.
All right. So at this point, what I'm just going to ask you to do is slowly and take a breath when you need to, and let's make sure the jury hears everything you have to say, okay?
Okay.
In trying to figure out how to approach this thing, this is a very large series of events here, so what I'm going to try to do is take them chronologically. That means in order of time, okay?
Okay.
And as I can recall, the first thing that I can recall happening is Ms. Shinola takes the stand and testifies basically to the fact that you stole her gun. Do you remember?
Shnotala.
Shinotala, thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
And yes,
Yes, I do remember.
did you in fact steal her gun?
No, I did not.
But you're not denying you came in possession of the gun.
No, I'm not.
How did you come into possession of Ms. Shinotala's gun?
She sold it to me.
Give us some more details. What were the circumstances?
Well, she was getting divorced, is what she told me. She never wanted the gun. She tried to sell it to somebody else that we worked with, but he wouldn't buy it because I had a scratched off serial number on it.
I'm sorry, let's stop right there. Scratched off serial number. They talked about this, the serial number being sanded off, removed from this particular gun. Do you remember that testimony?
It was ground down. It wasn't completely off, but it was ground down.
Okay.
Yes.
So is it your testimony that when you received it, it was already, the serial number was already
Yeah, it
removed?
was already ground off.
Okay. So you call what you paid for this gun?
I think $150.
All right. Was this a amicable situation? Did you have to twist her arm to get her to sell you the gun?
No, not at all.
Why did you buy this gun?
Well, my wife, whenever I was at work, my wife she was a little afraid to be home alone because I was a third shifter. I would leave my other gun, my little Bursa, I would leave that home for her, and if I went out of town, I would, without her, she would have the gun at the house, and I would like to have a gun with me, so that's why I purchased it.
Okay. Ms. Shatala also mentioned that there was underwear taken from her home.
Yes.
Are you denying that you had these garments?
No, I'm not denying it.
How did you come to have those garments?
She gave them to me. We originally started. I started at Herman Miller, back at Herman Miller at 2010 after being laid off. I started in her department. She had watched something with her husband, mentioned something about panties. It got to be a running joke. She, over the years, she would kind of offer them to me, and I would kind of ask for them. One day, she just gave me a pair, and then when I bought the gun, she gave me a second pair. So that's pretty much what happened.
How would you characterize your relationship with Ms. Shatala before these events occurred?
Michelle was I don't want to say, there's a reason she worked in our department with all men, because she liked the attention. We were close, but not close, super close.
Were you intimate?
No.
All right, so approximately when do you come into possession of this gun and the first pair of underpants?
The gun was in July or late summer, midsummer of 2013, and the first pair of panties was, I want to say maybe 2012.
Okay. There was testimony that, and inferences made that you would drive your snowmobile around her house during times when you knew she wouldn't be there.
That's not accurate.
What is accurate?
No.
What is accurate?
A friend of mine and I was snowmobiling. I'm an avid snowmobiler. And there's a trail up there in Montague. It starts at the VFW, I believe. She lives not too far from that, but she also lives across the street from the Wesco where we would go to get gas. I think I went to her house twice. Sean was with me both times.
Sean, is that the friend you were referring to?
Yes, Sean Stefanich.
Okay.
Sean was with me both times, and what I did was the first time I drove through her yard to let her know I was there. She was working. And the second time, we just kind of drove in and drove back out.
And you said you did this to let her know that you were there. How would you drive through her yard, let her know you were there?
Well, she knew I was a snowmobiler, and she would say once in a while, if you're up that way, you ought to stop by.
Did you mention to her that you'd been there?
I did. She mentioned to me that one time I went through her yard. She wasn't home that time. Her husband was home, but she wasn't home.
Okay.
But the second time, she had come to me the next day at work and said, hey, I just missed you. I went out for a smoke. I just missed you. I seen your tracks.
Okay. So if you
she was home that day.
So
Sorry.
if you drive your snowmobile to her home, if you've driven her home back in those days,
Well-
and she wasn't there, is it your understanding that she could recognize the tracks from your particular snowmobile?
Objection, that calls for speculation, Judge.
May I rephrase?
Okay.
Was there ever an occasion when you rode your snowmobile by her house where she identified your snowmobile by the tracks it laid?
Honestly, I wouldn't. I don't know if I could answer that.
Okay,
So-
that's fine. All right, so 2013, you've got this firearm, correct?
Correct.
Where does it go? You've got it in your possession. Where do you keep it?
I kept it in the house next to my filing cabinet.
And do you have any idea approximately how long? Well, I don't even know how long it was there. Did you ever remove it or put it any other place other than the filing cabinet?
Well, I took it with me in the van when I went out of town, and my wife was home. If my wife was home and I was going out of town, that's when I left the Bursa at the house for her and took the 22 with me in the van.
Okay. And the description of the gun is correct? It's a 22?
It's a P22, yes.
So the gun would travel with you, but when you weren't traveling, it was in the home. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
When you weren't traveling with the gun, where was the gun?
The gun was at the house.
Was there ever an occasion when someone else had access to your gun, other than you and your wife?
Well, we never locked the house. There was a time that somebody was coming into the house. We didn't know who it was. You could just tell by toilet paper. There was one time where the toilet paper got changed out, and I know I didn't do it, and my wife didn't do it. There was a few other times where some food was left out. I assumed it was Kevin or my buddy Tommy.
Who's Kevin and who's Tommy?
Tommy's a friend of mine I've known since probably 41 years since I've been in kindergarten. He
Who's
didn't.
Kevin?
Kevin is my cousin, Kevin Bloom. He worked down the street. I assumed maybe he stopped in to use the bathroom or something, but he would stop in. I asked him one time if he stopped in, and he never acknowledged that he did, but I could kind of tell it was him.
Okay. Can I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
I'd like to take a look at proposed Exhibit C. That's kind of out of order, but do you know Mr. Bloom's daughter?
I know both of them. He has two.
All right. Do you see either of them in that photograph of proposed Exhibit C?
I do not.
Okay. Now, you were here when your former wife testified, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
You recall who she believes stuffed up the toilet on an occasion?
That would be Kevin.
Do you have any disagreement with that?
No.
Do you know whether or not Mr. Bloom knew you had a gun in that hole?
He did.
How do you know that?
I showed him both guns, but the P-22 in particular I showed him right after I bought it. And it was in late summer, right after I bought it, maybe a month or so after I bought it. So.
Do you know if this was before or after Ms. Harrigan, Ms. Bletch was killed?
I showed it to him before.
And did the gun remain in your home, or did you move it someplace else?
Like I said, it was either in the house or in the van, and it was mostly in the house. I didn't take it with me in the van very often.
Did you lock the van?
I did, but the passenger side slider door didn't lock when you hit the automatic lock, so it wasn't always locked.
All right. Well, let's get to the meat of it. Sir, did you kill Ms. Bletch?
I did not.
You heard the test. Well, did you ever loan? Well, you heard the testimony. They found Ms. Bletch's DNA in your vehicle. You heard that testimony?
I did.
On a vibrator and on some gloves. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right. Do you have an explanation for how? Well, first of all, were those objects always in your possession?
Vibrator, I think, was my wife's, but the gloves were Kevin's. They were his softball gloves.
And how are you so sure of that?
Because he gave them to me in July of 2014 when he gave me the gun. Well, I lent him the gun because he wanted to, he said he wanted to buy one like it. And he asked to borrow it in May. He stopped by in May of 2014, and I asked him if he still had softballs, because he was a big softball person, and he had glove, cleats, and whatnot. I asked him if I could borrow his stuff because there was a softball game coming up for Herman Miller that I wanted to play in, and at that time he asked me if I still had the gun, and I said yes. He said he'd like to borrow it because he wanted.
Judge, it calls for hearsay.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. You recall him wanting to borrow this particular 22?
Yes.
Judge, you can't subvert this hearsay rule by asking a question that way.
Okay.
Okay. Let me try a third way. Did Mr. Bloom request to borrow something from you?
Judge, again, that's asking for hearsay.
Well, no, I mean, a question is not assertive, so it's non-assertive, therefore it doesn't meet the definition of hearsay, so I overrule the objection. You can ask him if he asked a question. Yes.
And if I think I got it right, did Mr. Bloom ask you to borrow something? Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
What was it he asked to borrow of you?
My P-22.
Okay. Was this before or after Miss Bletch was killed?
This was before.
And did you ever get the P-22 back?
I did.
When was that?
In July, it had been maybe mid-July. He stopped back by. He had him sitting on the seat. What we did was he would pull up, like at the end of my driveway when I was out throwing the Frisbee to the dog in the morning. And I would go up talk to him through the window. And the gun and the gloves were sitting there in a thing. And he said, "Here's your gun back, and here's some of my softball stuff." And I said, "Well, do you have the gloves or whatnot?" And he said, "I don't have any of that stuff, but you can use that." So I took it.
And where did you put all that stuff?
The gun I put back into my house. The gloves I just threw in the van.
There's testimony about this toolbox where a lot of the gloves and some other things were found. How did if you just tossed the gloves in your van, how did they end up in the toolbox, if you know?
That's a kind of a funny story. My wife and I had purchased some toys, and they were in the house.
Are we talking about sex toys?
We are. They were in the house, in my closet. I think there was a picture of it in the pink room, I think they called it. That was my closet. And they were in a shoebox in there. And my grandson would come over on Wednesdays. And my wife would watch him, but this particular Wednesday, she had something at church she had to do something, and I had to stay up and watch him. Well, he was in the other room. We were playing hide and seek, and he got in there and brought me a pair of the handcuffs, and I quickly took him away from him, and I thought to myself, when he's gone, I'm gonna get these out of the house. Well, first thing I was gonna do was lock him up, and then the second thing was, after I thought about it, I thought I'll just get him out of the house altogether. So that's how they ended up in the toolbox. My wife's grandfather had passed, be a grandfather, had passed away, and we had gotten some of the items from his house. One was this toolbox. It was in my van because I just didn't have room for it at the time. So I took the toolbox out, put that stuff into the toolbox, and put a lock on it. My intention was to put it in the shed. And I have an upstairs part of my shed. That's where I keep like the Christmas stuff, the Halloween stuff, whatnot. Stuff you don't use all the time. I was going to put it up there just because I didn't have any intention of using that anymore. We were having sex, so it was something that we just probably would never use again. So my intention was to put it up there, but we also had bought a bunch of stuff for a project that she wanted to make. She found on Pinterest, I think, and we had it was just loaded. The shed was just loaded, so I couldn't even get to the upper section. So I put it in the van. That's how it ended in the van.
On the day Ms. Bletch was killed, you worked third shift, you said?
That's correct.
What are hours of third shift, if you remember?
Well, at the time I was arrested, I worked 10:30 to 6:30. But at the time Ms. Bletch was shot, I was working 9:45 to 5:45.
And Ms. Bletch was shot on the 29th of June, 2014. Do you know if you were working that night or not?
I did go to work that night, yes.
Do you have any other recollections about that day in general? Anything else that came up?
Well, I cut the grass that day, between 4 and I want to say 6:30. I was cutting the grass. I have a rider, but my rider wasn't working, so I had to borrow a push behind mower from Sean, and he works 6 to 6, I think. He's a police officer for North Shores. He works 6 to 6, and he gets home usually around 6:30. I got done cutting the grass at 6 o'clock, but I still had to trim, and I went at 6 o'clock. I started to trim. After I got done trimming the main part of my yard, it was about 6:30. I went in and I wanted to call him because he usually doesn't, like I said, get home till 6:30. So I don't like to bug him because sometimes he stays over and does his reports. So I called him at 6, whatever time that said. I wanted to talk to him about the snow show that was coming up in Greenville. It's where we get our oil usually, and he needed to get something for his ski.
Did he answer the call that night?
Not when I first called him. I don't know if he was home. Nobody answered the phone, but he has a tendency to leave his phones off and off the whatever the things in the batteries die on them. So.
Okay. Let me ask you. Take a look at Exhibit B, Defense Exhibit B. You trying to tell the jury about the time that you called your friend, Defendant?
Mm-hmm.
Does that document help refresh your recollection of what time you called?
It says 22:26. Date start and date end was 22:26. 9 seconds. So that would be what? 10:26 minus 4 hours would be 6:26.
Does that reflect your recollection of that telephone call?
Yeah, that's about right.
Now, there's some question as, does it give your friend's phone number there?
Oh,
Or just,
from number 1-231-777-0070.
whose number is that?
That would be my home phone number,
The landline?
the landline.
Okay.
To number 1-231-773-5869.
You know whose phone number that is?
That's Sean's home phone number, landline.
Have you known your wife to call Sean?
If I'm over there, she would, but no, for the most part, no.
Okay. And was that a call? Well, let me ask you specifically. Was this a call from your wife that night, or did you make that call, or did somebody else make that call?
No, I made that call.
Let's talk about your van. You know the one in question. Can you confirm or deny with what we've been talking about? What type of van is it?
It's a 2006 Dodge Grand Caravan.
Okay. And is that one you drive exclusively?
No,
Who else drives that van?
my wife.
Okay.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't want to say I got it back, but we just got her car back. She had been in an accident in earlier in November 2015, and we were both driving it
Okay.
at that time. So, but when I first bought it, she drove it, and after a while, she stopped driving it, and so it was kind of an on and off thing.
All right. Let's talk about the night Miss Harrigan went missing. You've seen the video, the still photos and whatnot that's been amended yet at our desk and whatnot. You've seen all those, correct?
Yes.
And the allegation is that those are pictures of your vehicle.
That's what they're alleging, yes.
Okay. Well, you tell me, about the time that this vehicle pulls up behind the gasoline station. Is that your vehicle?
No.
Do you have an explanation as to why a vehicle of that nature or your vehicle was seen in that area at that time of day?
Not that time of day, no.
When were you there?
I was there earlier in the day.
And for what purpose?
There's I game, my buddies and I all kind of game, and they have a sports card shop over there that I was involved in a tournament over there.
What kind of game are we talking about? Poker?
No, it's called Magic the Gathering.
And what kind of game is that?
It's like Pokemon, but it's a little bit more complicated.
Okay. And because you were asked about these things by the police, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jury at this point what you were doing on that particular evening.
Well, the tournament started at 5. I had gone to Mr. Quick, I think, just before that, to get my wife some food. I had to stop at Sean's because Sean had some of the cards that I needed for my deck. And then I went to the tournament. I got there right around 5. I stopped at the Exxon just before I bought some mints for my breath. And I played in the tournament till about 9 o'clock.
Is the Exxon where Ms. Herringer was working?
Did
you know her?
I didn't know her. Officer Harris said that I said.
I don't need to know what he said, but
Okay,
did you know
I'm
her?
sorry. I didn't know. I knew. I mean, if I walked in, I seen her, I would recognize that I'd seen her there before. So.
There was another young lady who also worked there. Did you know her?
No.
You didn't know her at all? Did you know her to recognize her, the lady who was on the motorcycle that night?
Oh, no.
Okay. You didn't know her. And did you have any association with that particular store? Did you know the owners? Do you know anything about the store other than this Exxon station?
No, my usual stop on the way to work was Starbucks. If I stopped at the Exxon, it was either because I needed gas, and that was really the only place to stop on the way to work from my house, or I wanted a Mountain Dew that day.
Did you know then whether or not that Exxon station has video surveillance?
I had no idea whether I had it or not.
Now, there's testimony of a van that pulls up from behind that Exxon station and turns its lights off. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I heard the testimony.
Do you know anything about that? Was that you?
No.
There's testimony that a van matching yours, a description matching yours, was seen turning around and then going back to that station. Do you recall anything like that night?
No, I didn't do. I was home.
Okay. Other than the one occasion when you went by and got mints, and that was about what time?
It was just about 5 o'clok.
Okay. Other than that one occasion on that day, did you have any contact with that Exxon station?
No.
And did, as far as you know, did your van have any contact with it?
No.
Were you involved in the disappearance of Miss Harrington?
I was not.
Let's talk about, I think the last one is Miss S. Jan, the juvenile?
MJ.
MJ, thank you. MJ. Can't read my own letter. Do you remember picking that young lady up that night as you described?
I do.
Okay. Why don't we go back a couple paces? Where are you when you first see her?
I was on River Road, would be heading west.
Day or night?
Be in the morning.
Sun's up?
Sun's up.
Okay, so there's light.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you see when you're going down the road?
I see a young girl on the south side of the road, walking, and she just looked distraught.
Okay. So what do you do?
Well, I was on my way to Duck Lake State Park. I have labs, and I don't like to run them at the dog park because they get, sometimes the one got sick one time, so we try not to bring him there. So I try to bring him to different places. And I was heading out to Duck Lake, and on my way out to Duck Lake, on Weber Road, there's a snowmobile trail that crosses, and there's a put-in spot for the snowmobile, and I was going to go there first, and then out to Duck Lake, and then back home. I forgot what the question was.
What you saw her on the side of the road?
Oh, yes.
And what did you do when you saw her?
Well, at first I thought I should stop, but she wasn't quite where I needed, and she was on the other side of the road, so I turned down Weber, and I thought, well, I'll go and see if she needs any help.
And did you?
Yes, I did.
So what do you do?
I went down Weber to the next road, kind of did, was going to go around the lot, come back around, because she was on the other side, so I thought I'd just come up on her like that. But then I thought, well, I don't know if that road goes through, so I just did a U-E turn around and came back. And as I'm coming down, I realized I still had a bunch of junk. My wife gets into me about that. I don't clean up my van as often as I should. There was a lot of junk on the seat, so I swung into the blueberry farm to kind of get it so if she did need a ride, she could just hop right in. So
After you did, and I assume that's what you did.
yes.
And after you did so,
I'm sorry, what?
after you cleared the seat, what do you do?
I went down and pulled up next to her and asked her if she was okay. She didn't look like she was just crying and distraught, I guess.
Okay.
Best way to describe it.
Okay. So she looks upset at the time.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you, are your windows up?
My windows, no, they were down.
Okay. So when you pull up next to her, you're sitting in the driver's seat,
Yes.
passenger seat next to you,
It was
and then
open.
she's outside the vehicle on the road.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're talking to her through the passenger seat window?
Yes.
All right. So did you exchange words with her?
I asked her if she was okay. She said, no, I can't find my home, is what she said, which is kind of weird, but
And how do you respond?
I asked her if she needed where she lived, and she said she didn't know. She said something about buys.
Okay. And so how did you leave?
No.
What happens then?
I asked her if she needed a ride home, and she said, okay. That's how she said it.
How does she get, well, at that point, does she get in the vehicle?
I had to unlock the door because I was still in gear.
Well, that's one of my questions. Do you have one of those cars where you have to reach over and push the button down, or does it automatically engage when you go into gear or you start moving or something like that?
Well, if it's in park and you put it in the drive, they automatically lock. But in this particular case, I was stopped on the road. The car was already in gear. There's a second feature on my van that the locks engage after, I think it's 15 or 10 miles an hour. So
So did you have to unlock the door?
I did.
Okay, you unlock the door. What happens when you unlock the door?
She got in.
All right. Now she gets in. Now she's sitting next to you. Do you observe anything about her?
She's real jittery.
What was your initial impressions?
I thought she was on drugs or something. She looked like she was on meth.
Okay. And so she's real jittery. She's sitting in the seat, correct?
Yeah.
Does she put her seatbelt on?
No.
Okay. Do the two of you have a conversation?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Does I should ask, what do you do next after she's sitting there? Now she's sitting there, what do you do?
There was a bunch of cars parked, had been lined up behind us. So I kind of pulled forward a little bit and let the cars go by. And then I started the windows up. As I'm rolling them up, she just freaked out on me. She goes, roll them down, roll them down. And so I quickly rolled them down. But in the process of rolling them up, the locks automatically engaged. So
Okay, now the doors are locked and the window's coming down, is that correct?
that's correct.
Does she make any requests of you?
Not at that time, no.
When does the cell phone come up if it does?
I thought Byes Road was the next road, so I'd be heading east at this time. So as I started to go, we were almost to that next road on the left. I believe that is North Green Creek Road, but at the time I thought it was Byes. So I turned left there. As I turned, we'd probably gone maybe 40 feet, and that's when she said something to me, but I didn't. With the window down, I got hearing loss in this ear really bad, so I didn't quite understand what she said. So I turned and kind of looked at her like this, and then she said, "Can you please let me out? And I want to use your phone." That's what she said.
So what do you do?
I slowed down to let her out. I reached down in the center netting thing that I had. It's a lot of junk in there. Again, that's something my wife probably rolling over. But the phone I threw the phone in there when I cleared it out, and so I reached in there, and when I grabbed the phone, I come up with it like this to give it to her. It's a little flip phone, little black flip phone. Her eyes got like this, and she just went out the door. She went.
Did you push her out the door?
I did not.
Did you have an opportunity to try to restrain her?
No.
During this entire time, did you ever touch this young lady?
No, I did not.
Now, you heard her testify that you pulled an airsoft gun.
I did. I heard her
You heard
testify. Yes.
Did you in fact pull a
No,
gun,
I did not.
An airsoft gun, a
No.
toy gun?
No.
Okay. You also heard her testify that there was an orange tip to this gun.
Yes.
Did you have anything in your car that was orange?
Well, there's my wife's needle tips.
Like the one that we saw in that exhibit?
Yes.
Were they in the car?
There was some of them in the car. Yeah.
Where were they if they were in the car?
The needles that they have on the exhibit were in my little black box that I had underneath. It's like a medicine / junk box. I don't have a trunk in my in the van, so I can't put that stuff that's supposed to be in the trunk in a trunk. So I had to buy little lock boxes.
Were these objects in a position where someone might be able to see them if they were sitting in the passenger seat?
No, that particular box wasn't, but like I said before, at the time my wife had been using the car, and we would go 4 times a year to Grand Rapids to get, she went to the Ouija Center, I think is the name of it. That's where for her diabetes. She would go there and get her supplies there. So it could have been in the centerpiece. My niece also had diabetes. She also had type 1 diabetes. So she would ride with my wife as well in the van. So it could have been hers too.
So MJM jumps out of the vehicle, right?
Right?
The vehicle was still moving.
Yes.
Were you, and I think you testified you were slowing down at the time, but was still moving, correct?
I was probably going about 15 miles an hour.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly. I didn't really look at it, so
All right.
I just know I hit the brakes almost immediately
When?
after she jumped out.
Okay. Were you surprised that she jumped out?
Yeah.
Had you threatened her?
No.
Had you pointed a gun at her?
No.
Toy gun?
No.
All right. So she jumps out, and what do? You stop the vehicle, and then what happens?
I threw it, parked, jumped out, see if she's all right. By the time I got to the back of the van, she was booking down the road, screaming, "Don't shoot me! Don't shoot me!"
Well, how did you respond to that?
I didn't know what to do. I just kind of freaked out, got out of there.
Why did you get out of there? Why didn't you stick around to see how this story ended?
I mean, I was afraid, I guess. I didn't want to get arrested for leaving this, well, I should say leaving the scene, but having an accident like that. I just didn't want nothing to do with it. She was acting funny. She was, I don't exactly know how to describe it. She just, I didn't want to be there, so I left.
Okay. There's been some testimony that insulin, a bottle of insulin in the van, or that there was a bottle of insulin found in the van. Do you know, first of all, did you put that insulin in there?
I think I did, yes.
Do you know how long it had been in there?
Oh, months.
Do you know whether or not insulin needs to be refrigerated?
It doesn't have to be refrigerated. It stays a lot fresher if it is, but it doesn't have to be.
Why do you have insulin in your vehicle?
As both my wife and my niece are diabetic, and my wife is what's called a brittle diabetic, and that just means that 1 minute her blood sugar could be 80, which is really low. The next minute it could be 500, which is really high. And if it's 500, she has a pump, but the pump won't give her enough insulin fast enough, so she has to give herself a shot.
And so why do you have the insulin?
Why do I have
you
insulin?
the insulin in the vehicle?
For her, like I said, she was driving the van. If we're ever out anywhere, my wife is notorious for taking a shower, taking her pump off, and then forgetting to put her pump back on. So we'll be out somewhere, and she'll go, "I'm not feeling good," and I go, "Did you put your pump back on?" She'll go, "Oh, I forgot it." So if her blood sugar's high, she gets what's called acidosis if she gets too high, which is very dangerous for a diabetic. So if we don't have the insulin for her, we either have to rush home. Sometimes there was one time we were all the way in Grand Rapids, shopping for, maybe it wasn't Grand Rapids, Holland. It was, she liked to go to that, Michael's. At least an hour away from home, so that was the purpose of the insulin in the van.
All right. Please come in. Oh, before I get to that, tell us about your grandfather's house. The one where they find all the bleach in the basement.
The bleach and my grandfather was 98 when he passed in 2011, but he was going up and down the stairs up until he was 92. That's where my grandma and him had all the laundry stuff. It was all in the basement, and that's where he did his laundry, was down in the basement. In 2005, I think, my dad had passed away in 95, so my mom always took care of him. She had his stuff moved up to I guess it would be the mudroom of the house. So, but he left all of the Clorox boxes and the Tide boxes and all that down in the basement. So,
Did you ever use the bleach or the Tide or whatever it was that was down that big, or anything else to remove anything other than ketchup from a shirt? I mean, did you ever use it to remove DNA or fingerprints or any other thing that you might think is evidence?
no, that was there in 2000. Well, like I said, 2005, I think, is when all that stuff up. So all that stuff that was down there was what Grandpa left down there.
Did you use that stuff at all?
No, I don't.
And who else had access to that home? Do you know? Was there anyone else besides you? Had
Well,
any of those blocks?
Grandpa passed away in 2011. My brother Larry was the executor, and he had a key to the home, and my wife had a key to the home because when my mom passed in 2006, she was taking Grandpa 3 times a week to breakfast. So when she passed, my wife and I took over. So what my grandpa gave us a key, so in case we needed to get in to see him, or so I had access and Larry had access. When in March of 2013, I stopped over the house after the snow, and a pipe had broke off in the basement, and there was like, I don't know, this much water in the basement. I went to let myself in with the key, and the key wouldn't work. And I found out later that Ben had borrowed Larry's key and broke the key off and replaced the lock. So I didn't have any access to the house at all. So I had to kick in the back basement door to get into the house to find out what was going on, and eventually to get in and shut the water off, so that it wouldn't flood anymore.
There's been evidence introduced of hard drives and computers in your home. First of all, there was a computer in the living room. From whence did that computer come?
There was 2 computers in the living room. One was an E-machine and one was a Gateway. In 2015, a friend of mine, Jim Batch, he had gotten divorced, was getting divorced from his wife, bought a house. They reconciled. He was selling his house, and him and his son had their stuff in the garage, and they didn't need it anymore. And he asked my wife and I if we needed anything, if we wanted to, because my wife was a member of the Salvation Army in Grand Haven, if we wanted to donate any of that stuff. And we grabbed a bunch of stuff, and I grabbed the computers. So.
Did you actually use any of those computers?
Once again, I collect stuff sometimes. So it's just sat there until my intention was to get to it, but I never got around to it.
All right. You said there were 2 computers in the living room.
Yes.
Did you use either one of them?
No, I did not.
Okay. There was a computer in your bedroom, or in a bedroom, right?
A tower is what you're talking about,
Yes,
right?
thank you.
Yeah, a tower. There was a tower, yes, an Asus
Okay.
tower.
Did you use that one?
I did.
And monitor there for that purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's been evidence introduced indicating that you had hard drives, and from the description, it sounded like they were secreted around the house. One was in a heating duct or a cooling duct, and the other was someplace else that was kind of secret. Do you know, first of all, were these your hard drives?
Yeah, they were.
And why were they placed in the locations they were placed?
Well, the one was in the drawer of the bedroom, which was right next to where the computer was. That was the one I used. The other one was just a backup. In case somebody came in and stole my stuff, I had a backup for it. The other part was the one that I used that was in the dresser drawer. Something happened to it, and it only said I had 5% left on it, so that's why I got the second one, because I wasn't sure if there was something wrong with it and if it would fail on me or not, so I bought a second one. My hard drive, on my Asus, I think I had that fixed twice or 3 times. So originally, the first hard drive was for that, and then the second hard drive was to back up the second hard drive, because I think I screwed that one up.
So how many of your computer system, what worked and what actually worked? What were you actually using?
I was using the Asus. In the house, there was the Asus. That was mine to use. We had a laptop, an older laptop. I think it was a Hewlett Packard that we bought for my wife way back, and then she had a Surface, and then she had her phone. So, but the Asus was mine. I used the Asus. I mainly just gamed on it. That was the Asus computer was bought. It was a 1 terabyte, I think, 1 terabyte, and it was built as a gaming computer. So.
You heard testimony in this trial about a police officer who tried to call your wife and left messages. You remember that?
Yeah, that would be Corporal Hare. Yes,
Right.
I do remember that.
And that the testimony was that it was left on a recording machine, a tape recorder?
My wife, her memory's not the best. The tape machine that she's talking about was an AT&T I got when I first moved into that house, which was back in '97, I think. We hadn't used that tape recorder one. I want to say we got the new one shortly after we got married, which would have been 2004. And that was just a digital one. So that tape one we had used. In fact, I don't even think it was in the house when the police came. I think I had thrown that one out. Actually,
So how do they leave the message then?
he called twice to the home phone, 3 times to the home phone, and he called my wife's cell phone, and that's where those recordings came from. It was my wife's cell phone.
So when he said he left a message that time, and then they find these messages later on that exhibit, those are recordings from your wife's cell phone?
They are. They're not from the home phone.
Does your wife keep her own phone, or is there any reason?
No,
why
she has her own phone. The reason I have a cell phone is because she is diabetic, and she needed to be able to get a hold of me. I didn't really want a phone at all. I didn't need one. I didn't think I needed one, but she purchased one for me.
Let's talk about I think the description was tens of thousands of S&M porn videos and tapes that the police found on your computers and hard drives. Did you in fact download those things?
I did.
The description was that they were pretty horrific. Is there an explanation for why you had that material?
My wife, she had an abortion in 2010. We tried. The sex life was kind of downhill after that. We tried a few things. We tried toys and lingerie and videos and whatnot, but eventually we just stopped having sex. So I guess that was my outlet. I don't know any other way to put it. It's kind of embarrassing, but
there was testimony that when the police came to talk to you, you allowed them to go through the van, but you didn't give them your cell phone, and your cell phone was sitting right by your keys. You remember that portion of the trial?
I do.
Why is it? First of all, is it accurate? Did you
No, it's not. I showed them my phone.
explain this little circumstance? What happened?
Well, Corporal Hare and Sergeant Baker came to my house on May 7th. I think it was around 11 or 10. Knocked on the door. I opened the door. The dog went out. We talked about the dog a little bit. Corporal Hare, he seemed more interested in dressing the part than he did investigating. Sergeant Baker was taking notes. Corporal Hare didn't take any notes, as far as I could tell. He was asking me questions. We got talking about Sean because they worked with Sean. We talked for, I don't know, maybe a minute or two about that. Stephanie is Sean's wife. Works over there at the dispatch also. But They asked me where I was. I explained to them that I was at the tournament. I stopped at the Exxon. All the stuff that I said earlier, I told him about. He asked me if I had a phone, and I told him yes. Or he asked me what it was. He asked me what I stopped at the Exxon for. And I said I stopped for mints, and I opened up the door and I reached in and I grabbed the mints to show him, and as I grabbed the mints, my phone was there too, so I grabbed my phone. And we got talking about Sean's cell phone, how he's got a nice phone and I got a dumb phone, and we were talking about the phone for like, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, and I just put it back in the house. So.
Was it ever requested of you again?
It was. They finished the interview. We went to the van. I opened up the van. I told them they could go in and look, whatever they needed to do. I had to lower the seats in the back because the seats were, what do they call those? Stone go seats in the back. I had to lower the seats for them. They looked around. They did their little cursory look. And then they left. And about 5 o'clock, he called back to the house. That's when he asked if I could bring the phone in. He said he had forgotten to ask me if he could get the phone from me. And I said, I can't bring it in right now. My wife has it. She went to church for some function she did on Tuesdays. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I think, was her function day. And I said, but I can bring it in after. She gets home around 9 o'clock. I'll drop it on the way to work. And he said, well, no. And I said, well, can I give it to Sean? Sean, bring it in to you. I'll just drop it off to Sean, and Sean can bring it to you when he goes to work tomorrow. And he said, that's all great. Just drop it off in the morning. So I said, okay. So that was what our conversation was, about 3-4 minutes long.
Did you ever drop off the phone?
Did I? Yes.
Tell me, they found a list of people that have been identified as serial killers or victims of serial killers in your handwriting. Am I remembering that correctly, or just a typed list?
It was a typed list.
Okay. Why you got a list of serial killers?
I don't have any work in a shop, but when Miss Harrigan went missing, the rumors were, flying around, and there happened to be somebody that I work with that thought it was maybe a serial killer or something like that. So at that time, we were going up to, at lunch, we were going up to Speedway and getting our lunch or whatever. And we printed up that list. He wanted to go over it or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that's what he printed it up for. So, well, I printed it up, but he was only a temp. So he didn't really have access to the computers.
Tell me about that VIX folder.
The what?
The VIX folder.
Well, I don't trust the police. They're human. They make mistakes just like everybody else. When Corporal Hare came to the house, I did feel very good about it. He kept calling, asking my wife questions. I created the JLH folder, which was Jessica's, to put my phone records and anything that I could to prove where I was that day, because if they came back, I wanted to make sure that I had everything in order for them. When Miss Bletch was killed, at the time, it was a hit and run when I was at work. I had gone to work that night, and somebody named Bubba come up to me and he said, did you hear about the hit and run they had out in Automobile Road? And he said there was a silver van involved. So I thought to myself, if they come, because it's a silver van, they came to me before, I'm going to have this stuff ready for them. So I created the RSB folder to put the phone records or anything in there that I needed to in that folder, and combine them into a victims folder a VIX folder, I think is how the police usually call it. That's where the VIX folder came from.
What about the MJN? Did you have a file folder for her or not?
No,
Nothing?
nothing.
Mr. Willis, you're charged with, in this case, of killing Miss Bletch. Did you in fact do that?
I did not. I did not kill Miss Bletch. I wasn't even there. I was home.
One moment, please. Do you know where McCormick's is? The station, gas station that they have a picture of a silver or white van driving by?
The one on Bard, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
They put a picture of it in as an exhibit.
It's Bard and Russell.
Okay. How far away from your home is that particular gas station?
Maybe 12 miles as the crow flies.
Okay. Have you ever patronized that station?
I don't think so. I don't usually go up that. If I went up that way, it would have only been for Michigan's Adventure with my niece or my nephew.
But your understanding is about 12 miles from your home.
As the crow flies, yeah.
Do you have any idea how long it takes you to drive from that location to your home?
23 minutes.
Do you know where Mr. Bloom lives, Kevin Bloom?
Yes, I do.
How close or how far?
About 3 minutes.
The McCormick's gas station from Mr. Bloom's home.
About three minutes.
So obviously his home is closer than yours.
Oh yeah.
You've listened to the testimony in this case. You know Ms. Bletch was killed on Airline Road, correct?
Automobile Road.
Automobile Road. It's something to do with transportation.
Yeah. Yes.
Automobile Road, correct?
Automobile Road.
All right. Now, do you know approximately where that location is?
Approximately.
How far is that from your home?
About the same distance. I think the McCormick's is just before the highway there.
Do you have an estimate as how far it is from Mr. Bloom's home?
About the same, maybe 3 minutes.
Thank you. One moment, please.
My gal. Gal. Surprise him. Okay.
Your Honor, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Yeah, a few questions. Before I get started, Mr. Willis, it's fair to say that you've read all the police reports in this case?
I've read several.
Okay? You've read a lot of transcripts, I would imagine, in this case?
Transcripts?
Sure. Prelim transcripts.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Bloom's testimony, I think you probably read that transcript too?
I have.
Okay. And you know, obviously, this is an obvious question. You sat through this entire trial and seen all the evidence, right?
Right. Correct.
I want to start with Bailey Road for a second. 3038 Bailey. Your grandfather lived there, correct?
Correct.
And he passed away in 2011.
Yes.
So from 2011 on, nobody lived in that house, right?
No, nobody lived there.
Okay. So nobody was doing any laundry in 2012 or 2013 or 2014 or 2015 or 2016 for that matter?
No, no.
All right. And if I understood you correctly, well, I mean, you've seen the exhibits of the padlocks. Did you install those padlocks on all three of those doors?
I did.
Okay. And obviously you had a key for those padlocks, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you are aware of, police activity at that house, right?
I got a call on Memorial Day in 2000.
No, I'm sorry, bad question. Let me ask it this way. After you were arrested, police searched the house.
Oh, yes, I was aware of
All
that.
right. Now, one thing that, as it relates to Bailey, that Mr. Johnson didn't ask you about, I'm curious as to why, but, police find, you heard Detective Sergeant Zach Sparks read this note in a garbage can. Remember that testimony?
By Detective Sparks? Yes, I do.
And Lieutenant Mark Goff, from the Question Documents Unit, analyzed your handwriting, analyzed this, and said you wrote it. Remember that testimony?
I do.
And Mr. Johnson didn't ask you that question, but you wrote this note, right?
I did.
All right. And it contains a kit with handcuffs and keys. You wrote that?
I wrote everything on there, including the clothes part on top.
And matches and gas can?
That is correct.
Video from house, if any?
That's correct.
The other part of it, underwear and her panties? You wrote that too?
I wrote that too.
Zip ties. You wrote that?
That would be in the bottom section, yes.
Okay. Restraint board. You wrote that.
I did.
Bag of rubber gloves.
I believe, yeah, that's
wrote
on
that?
there too. Mm-hmm.
Small camera, big camera. You wrote that.
Yep.
Now, as it relates to MJN, and I apologize because I'm probably going to bounce around, but I'm going to try to stay focused. So if I understand your testimony correct, when you pulled up, first and foremost, you drove past the blueberry field, right?
Yes.
And was it at that point in time you were going to decide to swing back around and try to see if she needed a ride?
Well, the Blueberry Farm's not too far from the corner, so it was about right around there, yeah.
All right. But then you come back and you circle through the Blueberry Farm, right?
That's correct.
Instead of actually going through the intersection and, turning back around down Weber and taking a left on River to see if she needed a ride, you do a U-turn in the Blueberry Farm.
Yes.
And if I understand your testimony correctly, she asked for a ride. She did.
She did.
As opposed to her testimony, which was she actually didn't want a ride. She just wanted to use your phone.
Is that a
Right?
question?
Yeah, that's a question. I mean, you recall her testifying to that, right?
I don't actually recall that, but I imagine she probably did.
And in order for her to use your phone, you actually said, well, you got to get in my car first. Remember
No.
testifying to that?
I do remember her testifying to that.
Okay. But you're saying that's not what happened.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
All right. So if I understand correctly, you did absolutely nothing wrong in that encounter.
I don't know if I could say that. I mean, I left the scene of an accident.
Well, okay, outside of that, you did absolutely nothing wrong in that encounter.
I tried to help somebody that needed a ride.
All right. Yet you didn't stick around to make sure she was okay. Right?
No, I did not.
You didn't wait for law enforcement to show up so you could provide your side of what happened.
No, I did not.
And it's safe to say, Mr. Willis, that there were some media accounts of that particular incident, right? Remember reading those?
I do.
All right. And even after that, knowing full well that you were involved, you said nothing. Is that true?
Well, to me, she was
My
Hi.
question, no, my question is this, Mr. Willis. Listen carefully. Even though you knew exactly about that incident and everything about it, and that you did nothing wrong, you said nothing.
I said nothing.
And in fact, when Detective Schultz and Detective Stasiak are interviewing you, you lie about what you did that day.
At first, I didn't remember, but when Officer Sparks or Detective Sparks and Detective Levine, I think, when they had pulled me over, they pretty much arrested me. And I had asked if I was being arrested, and they were being very evasive and pretty much lying to me. So
Well, you're not answering my question. And Judge, I'd ask the court to strike that answer, please. That is non-responsive.
Okay, it is not responsive. The answer will be struck, the jury will ignore it, and you can ask the question again.
Thank you. My question to you is that you lied about your whereabouts that day when asked directly by two detectives. Yes or no?
no,
Okay. When they showed you video footage of your van on the north side of the county, you still did not tell them that you assisted this little girl. True?
true.
And that didn't jog your memory?
I knew that I was there, and I wanted to know what they had thought or what she had said.
So you, if I understand correctly, you knew you were lying, but we're trying to find out what law enforcement knew. Did I summarize that pretty well?
Well, you just asked me if I was lying, and I said no. So I didn't. I was being evasive.
Okay. You're evasive, I'm lying. We'll leave it at that.
Well, being evasive is.
Excuse me, just a moment. Your Honor, I'd ask that for counsel, the gallery as to responding in any way to the comments and questioning that they're hearing this afternoon.
Okay. I will if that occurs again.
So, if I understand correctly, as you are sitting there in that interview room, you know exactly what the detectives are asking you about. But you decided to be evasive to see if they knew anything else.
I didn't want to get arrested.
Well, that didn't answer my question. My question was, you knew exactly what they were asking about, and you decided to be evasive in order to find out what they knew.
That's the question.
That's the question.
Yes.
Okay? you would agree with me, Mr. Willis, it's somewhat convenient for you that you lend this P-22 to Mr. Bloom in May of 2014, and he returns it to you in July of 2014. That's pretty convenient for you. Would you agree with me on that?
No.
It's not. Okay. I'm curious, the person you had, you registered that handgun, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you purchased that handgun?
I did.
All right. Went through all the proper channels, right? Background check?
In 2003, when I bought it, yes, you
Okay.
had to.
Well, I'm just asking. Because I'm curious as to why, from your side of the story here, as it relates to Ms. Snotella's firearm, you really did nothing wrong, right? You bought it from her legitimately.
From my point of view, is that what you just
Yeah.
asked? Yes, from my point of view, yes.
I mean, it wasn't, when you bought it from her, it wasn't stolen, right?
No, as far as I know, it wasn't.
She
from her.
talked to you about it at work all the time, that she had this gun?
Not all the time, but
She talked to you about it,
she did.
so you knew she had it, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, you didn't register that P-22 when you bought it.
From what I understand, you didn't have to register it after 2013.
So you think you didn't have to register that handgun?
That's what my understanding was.
Okay.
You had to get a permit in 2003 when I bought my Versa. You didn't have to get a permit in 2013.
I see. And that's your excuse for not registering that handgun? So you didn't think you had to?
No, I didn't think I had to.
You mentioned that a coworker of yours decided not to buy it because it already had a scratched off serial or obliterated serial. Right?
Yes. Yes.
But you were okay with that?
I was okay with that, yeah.
So you're basically, well, strike that. I'll strike that question. As it relates to, I want to talk a little bit, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about Rebecca's homicide. So if I understand this correctly, you're telling this jury that from 4 to 6:30 p.m. on the day that Miss Fletch is killed, you're cutting your grass.
Yes.
And there's nobody else that can verify that but you.
Well, my wife, she was home.
I see. So what I'm saying is if your wife has no recollection of that, the only one that can verify that is you.
Yeah, I guess. There was somebody that went by that day, I think, that honked at me, but I wouldn't have no idea who that was.
Didn't talk to any neighbors that day. Didn't shoot the breeze with any of those folks. Only you.
No.
And I was somewhat interested in this phone record that you produced.
The what record? I'm
The
sorry.
phone record, the
Okay.
Vonage phone record. And you would agree with me that today wasn't the first time you saw that phone record, correct?
I would agree with you, yes. That would be, I've seen that before.
In fact, you've seen it before because you obtained that record shortly after Rebecca Bletch was killed.
I was the one that did the bills, so yeah, it was sent to our house.
And you, if I understood your direct testimony, you created the VIX file, right?
Yes.
And you recreated both of those sub-files, one for Jessica, right?
The JLH file, yes.
And one for Rebecca.
RSB file, yes.
And I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that you are the one that had that kind of encrypted code as far as their date of death and disappearance. You created that.
I did.
And within the Rebecca Bletch folder, then, you put all those photographs in.
Yes.
And you also scanned and created a separate folder for this particular phone record?
There was already one made. I just added the phone record from June 29th, 14 to it.
And you did that pretty shortly after Rebecca was shot and killed, right?
No, it would have been whenever I got the phone record. So I don't know when I got that.
Well, it was in 2014, was it?
Yeah.
So in 2014, you're squirreling away this phone record
Well,
for a murder you didn't commit, right?
it would be to just like the police officers when they.
That's it, Mr.
Yes.
That's a yes or no question.
Yes.
You're squirreling away that phone record in 2014, but you didn't commit this murder.
No, I did not.
I know we've kind of stipulated this, but your cell number back in 13 and 14 and 15, that was 231-855-4471, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And your house number, I think we've talked about this a little bit, 231-777-0070.
You say 231, you said?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm curious about your outlet, as you termed it. If I understood your direct testimony correctly, because you and your wife were no longer engaged in sexual relations, your outlet was abduction, torture, rape, and kill videos.
Objection, Your Honor. Characterization of the evidence, and quite frankly, it's inflammatory, it's prejudicial. The question is inappropriate and argumentative, and we ask to be stricken.
Judge, we've been talking about this entire trial. He's the one that said that was his outlet, that these thousands of images were.
The objection's overruled. I recall the witness, Mr. McCarthy, I believe, testifying as to the content of the videos.
I'm sorry. Repeat the
My
question.
question was, since you and your wife are no longer engaged in sexual relations, your outlet, if I understand correctly, is thousands upon thousands of abduction, torture, rape, kill videos. That's your outlet.
My outlet was porn.
Okay. That included women being abducted, tortured, raped, and killed.
There were zip drives, so whatever was on the zip drive.
Well, I'm asking you were watching videos of women being abducted, tortured, raped, and killed.
There was some that I seen, yes.
Some, how about thousands?
There was thousands of videos on there. I didn't see them all.
And you were familiar, I'm sure, as Mr. McCarthy was describing to the jury this video about the jogger. Remember that?
I do.
And you watched that video too, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay. The safe in, well, let me ask you this. The other videos that Mr. Johnson didn't ask you about that were contained on that hard drive that you said was yours, videos of the two neighborhood teenage girls. You took those videos, right?
I did.
And they had no idea they were being videotaped.
As far as I know, no.
You also took a surveillance type stalking video of Miss Snotello at Herman Miller. You took that video too.
Again, I'm going to object to the characterization. Obviously, counsel's free to ask the question, but characterizing it as a stalking video, I think, is inappropriate, and I'd ask that to be stricken.
I agree with
All right.
the objection sustained as to the question.
All right. You took a secret video of Miss Snotella as well.
I took a secret video of Miss Snotella and her lover. That's what I took a picture of, videos of.
I see. Okay. But she had no idea you were taking that video of her.
Neither did he, no.
And the other videos, the swim meet videos, videos of swim meets where the camera's being focused in on the genital and buttock area of the girls swimming. You took those videos too, didn't you?
I did.
You purchased, we showed some records, but that the Century safe, the safe that had the gun in it, you purchased that, is that right? Through eBay?
The one that was found under my seat you're talking about? Yes.
And if I understand correctly, the toolbox that was found, that was something you obtained as well. That was yours.
That was ours, yes. We bought it at my wife's grandfather's estate.
I see. And you put the injection site map in that toolbox, did you not?
Well, it was with all the other stuff when I condensed it.
Well, I'm saying that
Yes,
you are
I did put it in there.
You're telling us, you told us, I should say, told this jury that this little toolbox was your sex kit. Yet it had the injection site map on the inside cover of the toolbox. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming you're not denying the fact, since your DNA profile is all over that stuff, that you put the ball gag on.
I put the ball gag on, no.
No?
No, I probably touched it, but I didn't put it on.
You put the leather restraints on with that bar.
No, I never put them on.
You put the handcuffs on.
I might have put the handcuffs on just to see what they were like.
The other thing about the insulin, I want to ask you a couple of questions about that. If I understand your testimony correctly, you put this insulin and these needles in this little lock box, because it was the Century Safe was a combination lock box, right? It locked. And that was an emergency kit, I think you said?
It was there if we needed it, so I guess to characterize it as an emergency kit would be fairly accurate.
Okay. And obviously your wife's been a diabetic for a long time.
Since she was 11.
And you don't disagree with her testimony about in 2005 she went to the pump.
I would say yes, I do disagree. It was 2003, I think. It was shortly after we got married, and we got married in 2003.
So she wasn't injecting herself. I mean, that wasn't part of her daily routine. The pump kind of took care of her daily needs. Safe to say?
Emergencies, yes, she used the pump. Emergencies, she used a shot if it was too high.
Okay. Well, that wasn't what I asked you. I asked you that
her
basic needs were taken care of with the pump. Is that right?
Her basic needs, her bolus, yes. Basal, I think.
So if I understand correctly, then you keep this little kit in a locked box underneath your driver's seat. And the purpose of that is to have it in case there's an emergency.
That's what an emergency kit is.
And you kept the gun in that same spot.
I kept the gun in the lockbox that was what I purchased it for.
I get that, but the insulin and the needles and the gun they travel together.
Along with the eye things, the pills that were in there, yeah. They're all medicine, except for the gun.
So the Viagra is in case you have an emergency while you're driving? I don't quite understand that.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm not being silly about this, Judge.
Wait a minute, I haven't heard what the nature of the objection.
I think this is just being argumentative. This is the nature of the question indicates. And thank you. And then it also assumes fact pattern evidence. There's no testimony that the Viagra exists, but of course you used before, usually while he was driving, characterized in that manner. It's just a
Judge, the defendant has said that part of the purpose of that box was an emergency kit for his wife that contained insulin, medicine. Viagra is a prescription medication. So I'm just asking if it serves the same purpose.
He said
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
It was medicine, and like I said before, I don't have a trunk. You're supposed to keep medicine in the pill bottles or a prescription on them. That one, particular one, did not have it. The reason the Viagra were in there was a guy that I work with. Him and his wife were swingers, and I had the Viagra. I wasn't using it. He wanted it. I was bringing it to him, bringing it into work for him. It was in there. He wasn't working there. He had quit a couple of months beforehand. That's how I actually got his job. So, but I never took that out of there.
I see. So you're just helping a friend out.
Well, I was given it, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Good way to characterize it.
The other thing that I'm curious about is this voicemail. You're telling us today that the voicemail tape is a recording from your wife's cell phone.
Yes.
And did you make that recording?
We did. My wife and I, yes.
And you saved it. You saved it. You tucked it in that camera bag and you put it in the shed.
Well,
Yes or no? Did you save it?
we did, yes.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, my understanding, and I thought you testified this, and I may be wrong, but you had a cell phone, right?
Yes,
And your wife had a cell phone.
that's correct.
All right. So you both had cell phones.
Correct.
Okay. And that was true from 2012? I mean, was 2012 that you guys both have cell phones?
I think I had mine at that time. I know she did.
Okay. So for sure she had her own cell phone in 2012, and you maybe had it in 2012, but for sure in 2013 you had your own cell phone.
In 2013, I did, yes.
The
Would it be possible for me to get some water?
Sure, if you need some water, I can, since I'm looking at my notes, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Well,
As far as Haringa goes, Mr. Willis, you're not disagreeing with the assessment of Larry Brooks, are you? Larry Brooks classified the video or the abandonment video as a Dodge Grand Caravan manufactured between the years of 2001 and 2007. You're not disputing that.
I don't know. I really couldn't answer that. So
Well, my question is you're not disputing his testimony, are you? You're not suggesting to this jury that Larry Brooks, the engineer with 31 years experience, is wrong in his assessment that the picture on the video, the van on that video, is a Dodge Grand Caravan manufactured in the years 2001 to 2007.
the van on the video for
Boyer Coin.
Boyer Coin,
Yeah,
not the mattress one, the one that we didn't show.
Boyer Coin.
Okay.
Let's not
Yes.
be cute, Mr. Willis. I asked the questions, you answered them.
Yes. I would agree with that assessment.
Okay. And if I understood, and you're not disputing Corporal Hare's testimony, that when he asked what your activities were for that night, you told him that you did the card thing, that you were home about 9:45 that particular night, and you were home all night until about 12:30 in the morning the next day?
I am disputing that.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Johnson didn't ask you those questions, but go ahead. What, go ahead, tell the jury.
Corporal Hare, I told him I was home around 9:30, and I stayed home until about 11, a little after 11, and I got home at 12:30 is what I told him.
I see. And it's just convenient that coincides with the cell phone records that we've shown the jury in this case, right?
I don't know if that would be convenient.
And so you're suggesting that even though Corporal Hare, in the tip sheet that was filled out shortly after his conversation with you, which indicates that you indicated to them you were home from 9:30 until 12:30, they got that completely wrong?
3 years later, 3.5 years later, yes, they got it
Well,
wrong.
that tip sheet was made a week and a half after they talked to you, back in 2013.
It was also approved on the 15th, and or I should say, what is it? Little check mark for the 15th, and they came on the 7th. So,
Well, that's according to you.
no, according to the tip sheet, it's on the tip sheet. So when did they make the tip sheet? That's what I want to know.
Just so that I understand, Mr. Wells, because I really don't want to get in an argument with you, you're suggesting that, or what you're telling us is that Corporal Hare got it totally wrong back in 2013, back when he testified in this trial, that you told him specifically that you were home from 9:45 until 12:30 a.m.
Corporal Hare didn't
He was
write.
wrong. Yes or no? Was he wrong or not?
Yes, he was wrong.
All right. So, enlighten us. Where did you go at 11 o'clock?
I went to my grandpa's house
All right.
on Bailey
And why did you go to your grandpa's house on Bailey?
because my dog, we had a dog crate for him. He was 2 at the time, and he was climbing on it all the time. It was a little metal frame one, and he was bending it and breaking it. I went there to get wood for the top of it. That's what I went there for. And my grandpa is, in some of the pictures you've seen, there is wood everywhere. My grandpa was a carpenter, so that was his thing he did on the side.
So, if I understand what you're telling us right now for the first time, that at 11 o'clock at night, you decide you're going to go and get this for this particular dog crate.
That's correct.
Okay. And all right. You had been to that Exxon station quite a few times actually prior to that night, right? I mean, that was maybe not a regular stop for you, but you had been there before.
I'd been there before, yes.
And in fact, on more than one occasion, Jessica Herringa had been the cashier that waited on you.
I guess, yes.
Okay. So it wasn't like on whatever time it was, 5:30 on the 26th of April 2013, that wasn't your first time walking into that store.
No.
That wasn't the first time that you'd seen Jessica.
At 5 o'clock, no.
The whole, I just want to verify a couple of things. Your testimony about obtaining the gun and apparently Ms. Snotella's underwear. Today was the first time you've really publicly said anything about that.
We may have to ask the jury to step up for a moment.
Well, why don't we come over here first? But we're good. You can continue with your trial.
Thank you, Judge. I just have a few more questions.
So,
I want to just
But we're-
jump back
we're done.
on
So,
a line
you
that
can
I
continue
think
with
we
the
asked.
process.
You had indicated today that at 11 o'clock you drove up, I'm sorry, in context, April 26, 2013, 11 o'clock at night, you're driving up to your grandfather's house on Bailey for this board for the dog thing.
It was about quarter after 11, yes.
All right. Quarter after 11.
Boards.
And you were there from, I guess you were there from, what time, I guess, let me ask you this, what time did you get to the house? You had indicated today that.
It'd been about
at
20
11
20
o'clock
after.
you drove up.
20,
This is
25
after
after.
11, in context, okay? April 26,
And,
2013. 11 o'clock
you got
at
the
night,
board?
you're driving up to your grandfather's house on Bailey for this.
Oh, I grabbed several.
Several, okay.
It was about quarter after 11,
Yes.
yes.
And then,
Boards.
and you were there
Yeah,
from, so you grabbed, how many boards? You were there from,
How many?
what time, I
I
guess,
guess,
let me ask you this, what time did you get to the house? You got back in your car and drove home.
it'd been about
And what? in
20,
what
20
time?
after, 20,
20
25
after
after.
11?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'd been about 12:30,
And,
somewhere around
you
there.
got the board then for the rest, whatever board you needed? I'm assuming. I guess that.
Oh, I grabbed several,
Several.
I was not.
So you grabbed several boards. Well, and I don't really care, but.
Somewhere around there.
And you were home, then you were at home the rest of. And I guess that. You didn't go
No.
anywhere else after that, or did you stay at home?
I was
for a
not.
few hours and then travel somewhere else? Well, and I
Well,
don't really care, but
when I got home,
at
my
12:30
wife
you
was
were at
hungry, so
home,
I went out and got some food
and,
for us.
okay, you didn't go anywhere else after that, or did you
Where'd
stay
you
at
go?
home for a few hours and then
Taco
travel
Bell.
somewhere else? Or
Well, when I got home, my wife was hungry, so I went out and got some food for us.
Okay, but it was. And where'd you go?
Taco Bell. The one I went to was, I don't know, maybe 7 minutes from my
But
house,
it
so
was. And Taco Bell's how far?
6 miles maybe.
Okay.
The one I went to was, then I went back home, maybe 7 minutes from my house, so
I want to talk, I want to kind of, and then you went back, finish off with my conversation.
And I went back home.
with you As it relates to this. I want to talk, take you back kind of finish off with my conversation with you as it relates to Miss. We're talking to you in the interview. And I want to take you back to when both Detective Schultz and Detective you recall, were talking to you in the interview room. This was
I do.
May. And I may have already asked you this, but it's in the context of this. You recall, they did ask you about guns
I
that you
do.
had. And I may have already asked you
They
this,
asked
but it's in
me
the context of this question.
if
You
I had any
did, they
registered
did
guns,
ask
correct.
you about guns that you told them about the Bursa, correct?
I did.
And when
They
they asked
asked
you
me
about other guns, you said you
if
didn't
I-
have any.
Any registered guns, correct.
Even though, the truth is, you told them about the Bursa. They asked you about other guns, you said you didn't have any.
That's Yes.
Oh,
correct.
Even though,
So the legitimate
truth is,
what gun you had is, you felt it necessary to
22
lie to
caliber.
the police about when they asked you about
Yes, I did.
it. So the legitimate
And,
what gun you
they
had,
also-
you felt it necessary to lie to the police about when they asked you about it.
I did.
and they also, and at that point in time, isn't it safe to say, Mr. Willis, at that point in time, you were pretty well versed in what happened to Rebecca Blatch. I mean, you knew that she had been shot, been killed. I mean, there were certainly a lot of media reports, but you knew all that, right?
Yes.
You knew the date when that happened,
Yes.
and I'm sure with two detectives, you were itching to tell them that your cousin just so happened to borrow the gun on May of 2016, or 14, excuse me, and returned it in July. But you didn't tell them that, did you?
But then the Rebecca Bletch never came up.
Yeah, but certainly you were already creating this alibi for yourself on the computer. You already had that established. So you were already concerned that apparently you might be a suspect, right?
I was not concerned that I was a suspect. I was making sure that I had covered the I don't know, bases, I guess, whatever, with Officer Hare and that whole situation. I wanted to make sure that if they came out, I had the stuff that they needed.
So you were concerned that you were a suspect in Rebecca Fletcher's murder?
No,
No?
no.
Okay. And you didn't tell both Detective Schultz and Detective Stacy that, in fact, you might have the murder weapon in your possession.
I had no idea what she was shot with.
Well, you don't dispute, do you, Mr. Willis, Lieutenant Crump's work on the ballistics, that both the fired bullets from Rebecca's head and the shell casing from the scene came from that P-22? You don't dispute that, do you?
Well, I know he redid his, he fixed his report a month and a half before he came to court, but I don't know what he did to it. I didn't get to see it.
That, Mr. Willis, that wasn't my question. My question was, you don't dispute the findings of Lieutenant Crump. I mean, you saw it on the screen yourself.
I do dispute it.
You do? All right.
This friend Bubba of yours, a coworker, was it the next day or that night that you went to work? So I'm talking about June 29th.
It's Sunday night.
All right, so you come to work June 29th, 2014. This coworker, Bubba, comes to you and says, hey, look, did you hear about what happened on Automobile Road? Right?
Yes.
In fact, says they think a silver minivan is involved.
He said there was a silver minivan.
There was a silver.
That's what he said.
Okay. And that got you concerned because 2 days later you're creating this VIX file and you're squirreling away this phone record, right? After that conversation.
Well, he was messing with me, so, but I didn't know what was going on, so yes.
I want to talk to you. Mr. Johnson asked you on direct examination. I'm going to show you. You're going to be People's Exhibit 261. This is the serial. Mr. Johnson asked you questions about a list of serial killers in the United States. You remember that line of questioning?
I do.
And I apologize. If I mischaracterize this, please let me know. If I understood it correctly, did you print this list out?
I did.
Okay. And I can't remember the context. It was something you and a friend maybe were talking about, or had not an interest in, but we're talking about. That's how the the topic came up.
Right.
Okay. And I don't know. I'm going to hand this to you here. Did you make this little hashtag here?
No, I did not.
You did not. Does the name Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris mean anything to you?
No.
You're not aware that Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were known as the Toolbox Killers?
I was not, no.
I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
Okay.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willis. You may stand down. Any reports, and gentlemen, at this time, the defendant wishes to present some evidence that involves an interview of Kevin Blum by the police. And in order to make this as easy for you as possible to listen to, there has been a transcript prepared of that interview. And so we're going to handle this somewhat like a deposition. We're going to have your assistant be on the witness stand. Is that what you're planning to do?
My expectation is to stand there in front of the jury, and I'll read the question, and she'll read the answer.
Okay, well, she would
Or
actually
she'll
be on
read
the
the
witness
question.
stand.
Vice versa, Judge.
Okay, well, anyway, we're going to have one, either Mr. Johnson or
Ms. Gorski.
Ms. Gorski be the questioner, and the other one be the answer. And the answers are provided by Mr. Blum. The questions are provided by,
Well, there were.
who was the
There were
questioner?
several individuals, Your Honor.
Well, police officers.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
All right, so that's why we're doing it this way, so that you can, without having to listen, this particular interview was recorded, but we thought it'd be easier for you to just hear it without trying to decipher what's in the recording. Correct,
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Johnson?
Your Honor.
Is that correct, Mr. Wilson?
It is, Judge, thank you.
And for the record, my associate is Catherine Gorski, Gorski.
Okay. So whoever is the answer, whoever's played Mr. Bloom's role here should be on the witness.
That will be me.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
Can you just let us know what page we're starting on?
4:30, just as,
Just want to make sure.
yeah, and I'd ask both of you to pay close attention here in case we make an error. Please correct us.
Yes, sir.
Did you?
Yeah.
So in effect, this is an exhibit. Because nobody's under oath. This is an exhibit. Okay.
Thank you, Judge. But as you sit here now, you know you handle that gun.
Yeah, it just all, the picture's just coming all out, and I'm like, he handed me the handgun, and I looked at it, and I handed it back.
And you didn't want to tell Tim and I that because he is your cousin, because you didn't know what this was all about?
I didn't have a clue.
You didn't have a clue what it was about?
About? Yeah.
And you certainly didn't want to believe when Tim and I were out there the first time that he could have been involved in any of this.
Didn't want to believe it, but
And now, that's what the source of your anxiety is that, oh my gosh, I handled the gun that was involved in this stuff.
probably, yeah. That's what I'm worried about.
When is the first time you talked to your wife about that?
That Sunday that I called you. Be wrong. And no, that's the question.
Quote, and I need to talk to you, end quote. And then you said, quote, I think I handled that gun, end quote.
Yeah, I think I handled it. But you know.
Well, I can tell you what is true. That gun killed Becky Blatch,
That's what I'm worried about.
which is what is causing you anxiety 3 to 4 weeks ago.
Right.
So you know you handled that gun up to 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Right.
And then it started causing you great anxiety because you held the gun that killed Becky Blatch, and now you're in oh shit mode.
I can see where that's going.
And then you're going back, but I'm trying to understand why you're checking your calendar as to where you were.
I have nothing to hide. You know what? If I touch that gun, I mean, that's fine. But I had no part of Becky or anybody's with any of his ongoings, nothing. And this is just driving me nuts. So,
Do you get on your home computer at home?
not often, no.
But you do sometimes get on your computer at home.
Yeah, it's,
All right. Have you looked up information about this investigation?
no,
Have you been following the media
no,
through your computer?
No.
Prior to us coming and talking to you, did you ever Google Becky Bletch or Jessica Herringa or any of these cases that we're looking at now?
Not that I recall, no.
So the source of your information for those cases would have been,
The news.
okay, when you say the news, you mean like print, online, watching on TV, what?
Yeah, I mean on TV, 13 or Channel 8.
You ever got online and did any,
No.
even though this was your cousin?
Right.
Well, I guess, part of the problem I have with the Bletch situation is now you're telling us your prints and your DNA are going to be on that gun.
I don't believe there's any more for me on that page, Counsel. Page 440?
Yep. So, DJ,
Yep.
you know what part of the county it was?
Was it Automobile Road?
Do you know on the road, off the road?
Nope.
Do you know what she was wearing at the time?
No.
Do you know how many times she was shot?
No.
What she was shot with?
No. Well, on the news it said 22 small caliber.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm asking you. Knowing from being told by another person, from a news report, from media, from anything, any information, right or wrong, or from what your information you've heard, what are you aware of? So you were told, or you heard somewhere, that she was shot with a small caliber gun, like a 22.
Right.
Any idea how many times she was shot?
No.
Any idea where she was shot?
No.
Never heard any of those details.
No.
And when you first heard about it, you heard about it through what news source?
The killing for Rebecca? It was after I got home, so either probably my wife, my kids, or the news.
You said something about marks. What do you remember about marks?
There are marks on her body or something.
And is that something you read or talked to somebody about?
I read that in either the Chronicle or heard on the news.
And I don't remember if we asked, did you know Becky Bletch?
We crossed each other's paths in the past. Cameron played soccer with her daughter.
Cameron?
My boy.
Played soccer with Becky's daughter.
Yeah. Cameron was little, so he's 14. She was a nice lady.
And so the context in which you would have had contact with her was what?
Just picking up our kids at soccer practice. What's up? Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the next page?
250.
All right. What's that?
What did you do to your cell phone on May 26th?
What do you mean?
Well, your cell phone looks like it had a reset on May 26th.
Yeah, I reset it.
Okay, and you reset it for what reason?
Just to clear out some of the data.
What data is it that you needed to clear out?
Well, of course, I had porn on there, but it was just one porn site, but
Well, let's talk about that.
okay.
So tell me what, May 26th, you decide what?
I just emptied it out.
And what did you do to reset your phone?
I don't remember. I just pushed a button and it said reset phone.
Did you do that yourself, or
Yes,
you took it somewhere to have it done?
I did. What's the problem?
Well, you understand that you're appearing to be cooperative with us,
Right?
knowing full well that you're handing us a phone that has been reset, so
I reset it. I mean,
how did you go into your phone and know how to reset it?
you just go in and just push reset.
And have you done this before?
No?
So this is the first time you've ever reset your phone.
I believe so, yeah. Or maybe the second time.
And what prompted you to reset your phone?
Just to do it, I didn't want to do anything with anything. I didn't want to do anything with anything anymore, and I just, you know.
6 of this year, you're no longer into porn, and you're
Right,
going to reset your phone.
right.
And what prompted you to make that decision?
I just to do it.
You understand why it's hard for me to follow that reasoning?
You know what? I just did it. I just did it.
Because you found out what?
Found out,
Well, I can tell you where I'm going with this.
with Jeff.
On May 25th, Jeff got charged with Becky Bletch's murder.
Right.
And on May 26th, you reset your phone,
Oh, you know what? I just did it.
knowing full well that you had touched the gun.
I don't know for sure that I did, but okay, yeah.
Having a real good idea that you had your hands on the gun that killed Becky Bletch.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
But then you go in and dump your phone. Did you dump your home computers also?
We only have both my daughter's laptops.
Okay, so both your daughters have a laptop.
Right.
You don't have a home computer.
The older one's downstairs, but I don't think we've used it in quite a while.
Did you do anything to your computers?
No.
Did you get rid of any of your computers?
No.
Did you get rid of any digital devices, memory cards, recordings?
No.
Porn videos? Did you?
No, I didn't have any. No.
What type of porn was on your phone that you were concerned about?
Just adult porn.
Why would you be concerned about that?
I believe that concludes that page. I believe our next page is 258. 57? Okay, this portion. All right. Matter of fact, all right.
You didn't reset your phone for what you just said. What's the truth?
I reset my phone.
Okay, but what's the truth for why you did that?
There was porn on it.
You're not hearing what I'm saying. We're not done.
Uh-huh.
What's going on?
That's exactly there was porn on it. And I've done it in the past, though. There was regular porn on there. That was it. I had regular porn on there, and I didn't want to get caught with it.
By who?
Anybody. I didn't do anything wrong.
Who were you worried about being caught by?
Anybody. My wife, my kids.
And how long have you had a porn problem? Your whole life?
No. You know what?
About it, because the only thing that's going to help you here is the truth.
Right. All I had was regular porn on there. I'm serious. That's all I had on there, okay?
Well, what's the connection to Jeff then? I mean, what?
I don't want to be any part of him. That's why I did it.
But why?
I said, you know what? Reset it. That's it.
What does having a porn site an adult porn site on your phone have any connection to Jeff? What's the connection there?
Right.
There's no connection.
I didn't want to be part of it at all. Well, I just reset it. I just told you everything. That's all I know, and that's the only thing that I was worried about is this. You know what? That's it. That's all I have.
Does your wife know about your porn?
My porn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she told me to get rid of it.
7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah, I've gotten rid of it in the past, yeah.
Does she know, did you have discussions with her recently about wiping your phone?
No, I told her, yeah, it's all done with. I said I'm done with porn.
When was that?
About 2-3 weeks ago.
2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
You had a discussion with your wife about being done with porn.
right. I said, because I said, you know what? I don't want to do anything with that again. I don't want to do anything with Jeff. I said, you know what? If this is ridiculous, he was up to, and I knew it.
And did she know at the time that you had porn, like 2 or 3 weeks ago? Did you have a discussion with your wife about you having porn? Does she know that? I mean, because
Yeah,
you get when we leave here, I get to interview her still.
yeah.
So I want to know what she knows.
She knew I had porn in the past, and then I got rid of it. Mm-hmm. And I told her I got rid of it, and
Does she know you dumped your phone 2-3 weeks ago, the 26th?
I told her I got rid of all the porn on there, so, and I told my oldest daughter too. I said, you know what? It's ridiculous. People shouldn't be doing that shit. So, and that's the entire truth. I don't have any more information right here, right there.
Okay, so
Yes, page 265? I mean 565?
correct.
All right.
Okay, so what is it what is it that you think is making you? What is it that's making your mind trigger?
You know what? When I first met her in the soccer, I thought she was a beautiful lady. All right. And I looked her up on Facebook and stuff like that, but I would never hurt her.
Okay, and I don't think I agree with this. I'm giving you from here to here, okay?
Right. I wouldn't hurt her. I wouldn't kill anybody.
Okay,
And I'm the most honest guy in the world and wouldn't kill her.
okay. You looked her up on Facebook
Yeah.
after you met her, and when was that?
It had been, Cameron is 14 now. That was '08. So that's, what, 6 years ago? He was 6.
I just wanna-
No, it's U8.
U8. It is U8. I'm sorry. My apologies. Let me reread that line. It had been, Cameron is 14 now. That was U8. So that's what, 6 years ago? He was U6, U8. Okay.
So 6 years ago, you met Becky Bletch. You thought that she was an attractive woman.
But I never hit on her. We were just friends.
When you looked her up on Facebook, did you friend her on Facebook?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think so. I think she was on there, but
Did you correspond with her after you friended her on Facebook?
I never friended her.
Okay.
We just talked at the soccer games. That's it. Page 596. You know what? When Cameron stopped playing soccer when the season was over, yeah, a season's about how long, all right? She was a very beautiful girl, all right? And when the season was over, the only time I ever saw her was once in a great while, I think at school. And I'd say hi, or I'd see her from a distance and she'd go like that and wave. But other than that, I never ever.
Okay, so during the soccer season, that's when you first go on Facebook and look
Yeah.
to see who she is.
And then after she died, I was so shocked
Okay.
that I went and read the prayers that.
Did you add her as a friend when you went on Facebook? I guess I wasn't clear on that.
No, I don't think I did. No.
Okay.
No.
So how many times did you go back and look at her profile?
Just to see how every time like a news thing would come up to see what's new, because I really wanted.
No, I mean before that, before she died. How many times after you visited, after you went to her profile one time?
A few times.
More than just a few, or was it once a week, or
No.
look for new pictures, or?
No. I mean, yeah, she was a pretty girl.
Yeah, I heard. A lot of people thought she was a pretty girl.
Very attractive. Very attractive. But I wouldn't kill her.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to believe. I mean,
620.
I'm just trying to come up with why you had your factory reset on your phone.
I was afraid of the porn and all the pictures that I had on it, including I saved Rebecca's picture on there.
You saved Rebecca's pictures on there?
Right.
How many pictures of Rebecca? I mean, you're going on Facebook to look at multiple pictures to see if she's updated?
Right. Maybe 4, 5, 6 of them.
Okay.
I mean, I would say no more than 10. That was after she passed.
So you easily had them on your phone accessible?
Right.
But what else was on your phone that had you erase everything?
Just all the pictures.
So mainly the pictures of Rebecca.
Yeah. Page 104? What?
Then he tells you 2 years ago that he killed Becky Bletch and that you still continue to stop by there. And he still trusts you enough to hand you the gun that he used?
Because he wanted me to get rid of it. I told him no. I handed it back.
So you're saying now that he wanted you to get rid of the gun that he used to kill Becky Bletch?
I didn't want anything to do with it.
What do you think precipitated him to go meet with you that day to...
He didn't meet. I pulled up just to say hi.
You were afraid of him and that you still go pull up?
Yeah, I don't know why. He asked me to get rid of it, and I handed it back, and I said, no, I'm leaving, and I left.
2 years later, that's quite a huge gap between the time he said...
I don't know what the hell he did.
He didn't need you to get rid of it. He could have thrown it in a lake or river out there, exactly, broken into pieces. He could have tossed it in a lake, tossed it in a river, tossed it anywhere. He doesn't need you to get rid of a gun for him.
Then why did he ask me?
Because you were there.
He's trying to set me up, and I said no. I handed it back. He killed those people.
He wouldn't want...
He killed those people.
He wouldn't want to ask you. He wouldn't want to ask you because he knows you work for MDOC, okay? He knows you're a firearms instructor. You're a firearms instructor. He's not going to hand you a gun and tell you to get rid of it. You're a state of Michigan employee. So why are you trying to feed us this? You're a state of Michigan employee working for the Michigan Department of Corrections. You'd be the last person he'd go to. You know what I'm saying?
Hand me the gun before I left.
Because he trusts you.
Did he want me to keep it for him?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
He told me to get rid of it.
Earlier, you told me he wanted to know how to clean it.
Yeah, I'm such a...
That's a lie.
You know what? I'm tired right now, and I don't care anymore.
So you're describing this farmhouse. What are you talking about there?
I thought it was that one that sits up on the paved road just before Bard.
Why would you think that?
I don't know.
Well, before you said because there was some type of vehicle or camper for sale, and you drove by there, and you thought you had seen it?
Yeah, that was that was after the murder.
Okay, that's not what you told us before.
No, I thought she was killed on the paved part, and that was her house down the road from her house. I didn't know she lived on the dirt road.
How did you know she lived in an automobile at all?
She told me back when we were friends.
Okay.
In '08, we talked, but I mean, she was just a nice person.
So, how did he pull off the whole lasso trick and driving and tripping her and tackling her? I mean, that's a lot.
I don't know how he did it. I wasn't there.
Was he parked in the roadway when he did this?
He said he pulled up and tried to talk to her.
Pulled up in the road?
He said he threw the rope over her and took off and she fell. He got out and she screamed. I don't know what he was saying, that she screamed and took off. He tried to take off and he shot her.
How did he get her up to the van that close? What did he say to her?
I don't know.
You were starting to tell us the conversation earlier.
I don't know. I don't know what he said, but I'm serious. I don't know what he said to her to get her to the vehicle.
And somehow he's driving, he lassos her, and he said it falls down to her legs or her ankle.
Got out.
How did that work?
I don't know. She was able to get out of it, I guess.
Is that when he was with Jessica?
I don't know. He had Jessica, he said, but
Why would he try the lasso trick with Becky?
he tried to put it around her and it fell down too far.
Like around her neck?
Yeah.
Was she fighting it off and that's why she fell?
I think so, but I wasn't there.
You've taken us to where we're at this far now.
Right.
Because I don't know what to tell you other than the fact that we're about ready to leave, okay?
Mm.
And listen, you've painted yourself up against a corner, which I don't know.
Never. Nothing, none of it ever happened. Page 70?
Yes.
I touched the gun, okay? I've never been in any trouble in my entire life. Your Honor, that concludes the exhibit.
Okay.
Your Honor, defense rests.
Okay.
Judge, as I indicated in the sidebar, we do have a couple of rebuttal witnesses that I intend to call. Unfortunately, I can't get them here till tomorrow morning. I apologize for that, but part of it was I wasn't exactly sure how
Okay, all right.
things were going to go.
All right, so we have nothing further for the jury this afternoon?
That's correct.
Okay, but we can work on instructions, then we can remain and do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, then, as far as your involvement, we'll be concluding. The attorneys and I will be working on some other matters. Actually, one of the things we'll be working on are jury instructions. So that's a clue to you that we're getting close to the conclusion of the trial. The defense has completed their presentation, and so Mr. Hilson indicates he's got a couple of witnesses he's going to call tomorrow in rebuttal. Once those witnesses are finished testifying, then we move into what are called the closing arguments of the case, where the prosecutor will present his views and the defense attorney will present his views. Then I'll give you instructions, and then for the first time you will be able to discuss the case because you'll be deliberating on your verdict. So that is going to take place tomorrow. So the reason I tell you that is when it comes time to deliberate on a verdict, I don't know how long you're going to take, okay? That's entirely up to you. You could take 5 minutes. You could take 5 months. I don't know. That's up to you folks. So what I'm telling you is you're going to be deliberating tomorrow. You might want to keep in mind that you're going to have to have some flexibility in your schedule. We aren't necessarily going to stop if we're still going at 5 o'clock. It's going to be up to you folks. So just letting you know that. But in any event, if you would please return here tomorrow morning at 9:30. That's 9:30 tomorrow. Now, I want to get anything done that we've got to get done before we call these rebuttal witnesses now, gentlemen. Okay, for the jury's here tomorrow morning. I want to be able to start at 9:30. We were able to start this afternoon at 1:15. I want to hold to that tomorrow at 9:30. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't have any discussion with anyone involved in the case. Don't read, listen, or view any events through media accounts. Have a pleasant evening. We'll see you back here at 9:30. Do you need anything more on the record?
No, Teller.
Okay. We're off the record.